Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with Retire Different. Retire Different is a place for people who want to ask great questions to get good solutions and advice and when they're moving into retirement age. And I've got some guests today that are going to help us unravel some of the challenges that we face in that build up to retirement. My first guest is Pam Krueger. Pam is an investing and financial expert. She is an author and TV personality and is the co-host of PBS Money Track. She is also the creator of Wealth Ramp, which is an amazing tool. It's an online tool where fiduciary advisors can be matched with consumers like you. So welcome, Pam.
Hi, Margaret. And I have to say, you've got me really shopping for tea mugs because no matter what, you always have a beautiful mug of tea.
Here's mine. I've got my little one. Yeah, we have this thing going on here. This is the bringing humanity into financial issues. We have a little mug competition, Pam and I. But Pam, welcome again. And we have another guest who I'm very happy to meet, Jessica Searcy. Jessica is a principal at Searcy Financial Services, and they specialize in retirement income planning. She's been in the financial planning business for about 18 years. She doesn't look it. But she has, and she's got tremendous experience and has written many articles on fiduciary risk issues and protecting your assets if you have a situation with dementia, all kinds of issues related to financial planning. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
I'm really happy to have both of you here today because we have a community here of people with lots of questions and you have some answers, hopefully. The topic today that I wanted to chat about, though, is the fact that most of our community are boomers, people in their 50s and 60s who they're educated, they're healthy, they want to live a long time, and that is their plan. But many of them didn't really, get organized enough to be ready to live to 100. It's possible. And so the issues that come up around that in terms of psychology and the dealing with the personal issues are one thing. But Pam, tell us about the financial context, how the landscape is going to be impacted by people living that long.
There's a few things. Advisors like Jessica know that typically a couple who is both spouses are 65 years old, they have a 50% chance that one of the two are going to live to be 90. And so for financial planning purposes, advisors recommend that we're thinking of ourselves as our 91-year-old selves, and that's what we have to plan for. But the system with Social Security, for example, which is really one of the only true longevity insurance policies we have, because it will pay you as long as you're alive. The system, when it started, just to put some perspective to it, there were something like 150 something workers contributing, for every one person receiving benefits. And now it's down to fewer than 10. The ratio is fewer than 10 to 1. And a lot of that, Margaret, is because people are just living that much longer. But instead of getting stressed out about the reality of funding for that, I like to talk more about how you can make the most out of your retirement years.
That's the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is actually the big thing, isn't it? We can look at anything in financial services as a challenge and a difficult issue, and then also at the same time, an amazing opportunity. So I think that, Jessica, you deal with this every day. I mean, you talk to people about this kind of planning for retirement when people come in and they're 60 thinking, how am I going to get through, 30 years, which I'm hoping to live? How can I plan my finances? What kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk to people all the time who are generally on one end of the spectrum or the other. Either they're coming in and they're thinking, I'm 60, I'm 65, I'm ready to retire, and I need to take all my money out of the market because it's time.
Panic.
And you think, but you could live to be 100. Don't stop your money from working for you that soon. Or you have the others who say, I'm 60, I'm 65, I'm ready to retire. But my parents lived to be 100, 102, or whatnot. And I'm afraid I'm going to outlive my money. So you kind of have to look at both sides of that.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, Margaret, I think that's why that financial planners overall are using the age 91 in their software to project longevity. So 91 seems to be the number we have to plan for. Now, what do we do?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people think, and we've talked about this in other conversations about, the people have saved for retirement and put this, big focus on saving for retirement, thinking that bucket, that amount of money, a bucket of money is going to last them forever. But in reality, there is this reality that they have to think about income from that savings plus income from other sources. It's more complex now than just saving and then spending it until you die. Would you say that's true, Jessica?
That's absolutely true. And I think the number one thing that really shocks people is really when you start looking at healthcare and long-term care and the end of life costs are just so huge now, and they continue to get larger every day. And that's usually where you spend the bulk of those monies that you've saved.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually, because healthcare is a really important one. And we've got, along with that personality of independence and, education that boomers have, we've also got this almost like immortality, that we're never going to get sick, that we're somehow going to, be strong and live forever. But that's an important issue of what healthcare could cost you in your 80s. And you might be okay in your 60s and 70s, have enough money for all of that stuff. But then what happens when you're 80 and need care?
I have a question for Jessica. I like to look at, sorry, I have a frog in my throat. I like to look at retirement years ahead. For example, someone at age 65, I like to say, throw that age out the window in terms of thinking you're going to stop working because you've got, add another 25 years to that. So do you see with your clients that you break it down into phases and that the real retirement begins, the real retirement planning begins there, and you've got to plan for that second phase? What I mean by that second phase, Jessica and Margaret, is when you can't perhaps take care of yourself, and when you can't perhaps think clearly enough. You might be cognitively impaired and can't make complicated life decisions about money. So that's what we really have to plan for. Do you agree with that, Jessica?
Absolutely. And the way that we're seeing that manifest is you've got pre-retirement years where people are kind of planning, oh, hey, I really want to get to 60 or 65 so I can quit this job, right? But then often what we're seeing is people will go into this kind of midway quasi-retirement where maybe what they really want to do is they just want to scale back. And so they'll work maybe 3 days a week and have 4-day weekends every week. And that satisfies that longing to play and enjoy and do things that maybe they don't have time to do when they're working full time. But it also allows them to not have to pull on Social Security until they get past full retirement age. It allows them to continue to grow their wealth and not have to draw down on that hard-earned money. The other thing that we've seen people do is they'll retire for a period. So maybe they take 1 year and they do all of the things that they ever wanted to do, and they have that fun year, and then they say, okay, now realistically, I got another 20 or 30 years of wanting to do something and make a contribution left in me. What do I really want to do for phase 2?
Well, let's talk about phase 2. Pam, what do we do in phase 2? Because that's a really important time, because you may have spent a lot of your savings on that year or two, which is, I think you're totally right, Jessica. That's what happens. What happens, though, then in phase 2?
So what I worry about a little bit is I disagree with a lot of people who put so much emphasis on that first phase of retirement, and I'm going to go travel and I'm going to go have fun and all that. You're still, I would still be thinking of it in my mind. I'm still thinking of it. I don't care if I have what I consider to be a nice nest egg. I am still going to work and make ends meet, because two things have to happen here. Number one, I need to put off Social Security, just like Jessica said, until at least I'm 70.
Yes.
But I also need to put off tapping into my own savings. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to continue to work, just like Jessica said, but part-time. But now, Margaret, to your point about the second phase, this is my whole point. This is what we have to plan for.
Yeah.
This is why you don't want to touch your savings when you're 65, because you don't know how much assisted living or in-home nursing care or memory care is going to cost. You don't know what's going to happen to you or your spouse. So that's what you're saving for that part of your life, way at the end, from maybe 85 to 95 years old. That's when you have to have your nest egg.
Yeah. But you see, what was really interesting too, though, is you've got to be making those decisions for the 80, 80, 90, 85, 95 when you're in your 50, 60s, though, because that's when your head is clear about what you should be doing. So that's I think what Jessica's saying here is that's where you get in with the advice, and of course where you have to come into it, Pam, to find good financial advisors to match people who take that longer term view, but don't, take advantage of selling something that's not going to work at age 85. It's not appropriate, like an annuity, for example.
Yeah, and honestly, I have to say, I'm ashamed of this whole industry in some ways for putting such emphasis on, having at age 65 saved a certain amount of money, or else you're embarrassed and you feel like you're remorseful. And it's like, why should I feel like that? I helped put my kids through school. I helped my aging parents, with their expenses. Right. It's not like I'm bad, naughty, I didn't save enough. It's that I'm now 60, I'm going to be 65, and I know I don't have enough money saved. So right. It's meeting with people like Jessica to sit down and say, let's get over that. Let's talk about how we can prepare for phase 2, which is when we have to take care of our 90-year-old self.
And the needs of that 90-year-old self might be very complex. I mean, yeah, we were hoping that technology is going to provide us with extra limbs and new hearts, and nanotechnology is going to have little robots swimming around in our body, healing us from everything. That would be a great thought, but we don't know that for sure. Then
we'd really have to keep on working.
Exactly. Only the people that have got money to do something would be able to take advantage of the robots. So, but no, it's really true. So I think the fact is we're going to live longer than we think we are. We've got that first phase of retirement where we have to kind of consolidate everything, and then we've got a plan for 2. What are some of the other things, Jessica, that you always talk to people about? How can they save money, or how can they save money? How can they, consolidate their money in phase 2?
So that's a good question, but I think it really depends upon what their specific goals are. If I talk to 10 different people about what it is that they really want to do, I get 10 completely different, very specific goals.
Yeah.
And so these whole rules of thumb, they really do a disservice to the public, because rules of thumb, they just don't work. You really need to run the numbers. Figure out and prioritize what are your real goals, what is it that you really want to do, and then we can actually run the numbers and figure out what that actually looks like.
Yeah, I think that's really the tricky part. And I think that's where the humanity comes into it, because you're not then just talking about, the black and white, numbers in the stock market versus bonds versus this, whatever. You're actually talking about your lifestyle. Like, what do you want to do with your life? And I mean, are those types of questions that you find yourself asking people all the time? Like personal questions?
Absolutely. It's so hard for people to begin with the end in mind, because it is so far off. But if you can get really clear about your vision for your life and what you want to achieve and who you want to be remembered by and how you want to be remembered and what kind of things you want to do and how you want to play and kind of those sorts of things, then you can really hone in on, okay, what specifically are my values and my priorities, and where do I want to put my money, to accommodate or to prop up those values.
And Pam, this is where the fiduciary advisor comes in, because those are the people that talk like that ask those questions. Yeah,
you really need to have someone who legally is a fiduciary, putting your best interest first. Because I was just going to ask Jessica, if you feel like you have a lot of clients where it's not like Margaret just said, it's not so much, there's some discussion about stocks versus bonds and investments, but really the real focus is on sitting down and talking with family members. And do you find that you often have to help the family members talk to each other about that awkward, horrible conversation that you have with your parents when they're at that age, or you're the parent and you're at that age? You need to have that conversation with your family about where everything is, who has what, and that's as big a part of this planning as the investment piece of it. And that's why, Margaret, you have to have a fee-based fiduciary advisor, not somebody who's interested in selling investments.
Yeah, the behavioral psychology piece is as big or bigger than the money piece of it, because you know, transitioning from one generation to another, you know, you've got these family members who really love and care for their parents, and they really want to do good by them, but oftentimes the parents are kind of running interference because they also want to maintain their independence, but there's kind of this give and take a little bit. And to your point, getting everything to where everybody knows where it is and being able to access it, usernames and passwords and things like that. And especially now with everything being in the cloud, I mean, you know, we've got albums of family photos that are stored in the cloud, and who has the passwords and who can download those, or are those going to go away when mom goes away? So things like that is huge from a planning perspective.
I just had that conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, and I was suggesting, you know, it might be time for you to have the really awkward conversation about this with your kids. And there's just all this anxiety around it. And, you know, my suggestion was, don't do it when you're emotional. Don't do it like right after a funeral or something like that. Do it when you're not tired and you're not stressed out, and you can sit down with the family members who you know. Every family is different, God knows. You sit down with the person who is in your family, your eldest or whoever it is, and discuss straight up. Here's what our retirement looks like. Here's what our financials look like. Here are the keys to the castle and the healthcare proxy and all that. Now, Margaret, I understand none of this sounds like big financial talk, but it's all related.
It's all related,
all
yeah.
intertwined.
No, I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually, because I mean, I'm older than both of you, so I've actually got a context that's a little bit different, which is that a lot of people now are downsizing, thinking about exactly what you just talked about. I just went through an exercise of photographs. I did exactly what you just said, and the first thing I did was make sure that I gave my son and, well, both my sons, the access to those pictures. I don't want all those family pictures to go away. And I think that we're becoming more, that's part of that introduction I made at the beginning, that we're becoming more educated and more, you know, sensitive. We just need roadmaps now. We need a map, like one that you can offer. You know, that's what we need.
Jessica, you know, that's Jessica's specialization.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for you, Jessica, here. I didn't mean to, but that's exactly why it's so important that people understand that people like Jessica exist for the sole purpose of helping you map it out. There's no right or wrong. It's just mapping it out and figuring it out.
Well, I think that this is a great conversation. We've got a few other topics we're going to talk about, but I think we've covered this one about aging, you know, possibly to be 100 years old, how you plan from that 60s to 80s, and then that important part in the middle. But it's all part of a plan, it's like you don't do the map from one city to the next. You do it to the, you know, to the end destination. And I'd like to talk to you about my roadmap, actually, Jessica. It's a little bit weavy at the moment, so. But thank you so much for your input and insights. It's been very, very helpful. Thank you both. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Retire Different YouTube channel and check out our website at retiredifferent.com. We are a community of people who are asking questions and trying to make good financial decisions so that we can have an amazing retirement. We'll be looking at our relationship to money and also places that we can go for support, advice, and inspiration.